Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a really inspiring and I think profoundly practical guide. It's called The Roadback, a journey from failure to fulfillment by Reuben Juma Onunga. And look, this isn't just another self-help book, it feels more like a meticulously crafted roadmap, really for anyone who's maybe stared at the ruins of their dreams and just wondered if anything beautiful could possibly rise again.
Exactly. And what Anunga brings, what makes it so compelling, I think, is that he's speaking from this place of really raw personal experience. I mean, he navigated his own deep valleys, financial strain, emotional fatigue, that sort of inner collapse. So our mission today is really to extract the critical wisdom from his journey, to sort of reveal how failure isn't always an ending, but often it's the precise beginning of a powerful story of recovery and purpose. We'll explore the 10 essential steps he outlines for finding your way back, but maybe with a deeper lens, really trying to uncover the why behind each one.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. A good place to start seems to be where many journeys begin, even if we don't recognize it at the time. He calls it the subtle descent into the fall. And he opens with this surprising truth, one that really challenged my own thinking, actually. Failure doesn't always crash in like some violent storm. Sometimes, he says, it creeps in like a slow fog. He describes this outward success story, right? Climbing the financial ladder, getting contracts, speaking invites, but internally. He admits he was completely unraveling. Sleepless nights, anxiety, neglecting his own soul. He even says he was leading others while bleeding internally. That's quite a stark image, isn't it?
It truly is. And what Anunga unpacks here, which is, well, it's really counterintuitive to our culture, the whole always be strong thing, is that brokenness itself isn't the failure. It's often the catalyst. He argues it's less a sign of weakness and more like an urgent message from your own system, pushing you toward the transformation you actually need. His realization that brokenness is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of life trying to speak. Wow, that's a profound shift. It moves you from shame to seeing potential. So he chose to pause, canceled engagements, started therapy, confessed his struggle to his inner circle. And he found grace, not judgment. He says the pause literally saved him. It makes me wonder, how many of us feel that pressure to keep up that image of success, even when we're, like he says, bleeding internally?
Oh, absolutely. That pause sounds pivotal, critically important. It let him redefine success, not as, status or income, but as integrity of soul, peace of mind, depth of relationship, clarity of purpose, and shout. He quotes Mark 8.36, asking, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?" That's a heavy question. And he says he glimpsed the hollowness it could bring, realizing he'd been prioritizing performance over peace. This isn't just about a career blip, is it? It's deeper, a soul-level reassessment.
Exactly. And what's particularly striking, I think, is how he confronts his emotional weaknesses. He writes that he was raised to believe that showing emotion was a form of weakness. Many people can relate to that, I'm sure. But he comes to see that true strength is the willingness to feel and still move forward, to cry and still rise, to admit, I am not okay. That really challenges a common script in society, doesn't it? The fall, yeah, it was painful, but it became sacred ground for healing, for unlearning. It was the moment he realized the most important project I will ever work on is me. Just reframing it like that, it instantly shifts the whole narrative from shame to potential. It says the breakdown is an invitation, not a punishment.
Okay, so you take that first painful step, you acknowledge the fall. What does Anunga say comes next? How do you move forward from there?
Well, then he guides us to what he calls the unflinching mirror. And this isn't just, seeing tired eyes in the reflection. It's about standing before the mirror of my own awareness. It means confronting the fractures that no financial breakthrough had healed, confronting the bitterness I had baptized as drive. He recognized his own subtle compromises. He says, I'd blamed stress, people, systems, even God, without realizing I was also a contributor to my own unraveling. That's a tough truth to swallow, isn't it? That our own choices often play a role in our struggles.
It truly is. And it taps into something fundamental, I think. Our amazing capacity for self-deception. Maybe to protect our ego. Anunga's mirror step really pushes us past that resistance, doesn't it? To truly engage with what's going on inside. He mentions Revelation 3.17, hitting him like a whisper that thundered through my spirit. Realizing he'd mistaken activity for vitality, influence for intimacy, success for wholeness. Wow. He makes a point that the hardest part of recovery isn't the strategy, it's the surrender. The admitting.
Right. And it's not about beating yourself up. It's about a clear-eyed assessment.
Yeah.
That's what clears the path for genuine repair.
And that raw honesty, that willingness to really see himself, That led him to start writing things down, naming fears, disappointments, even forgiving himself. He realized fear had manipulated him, whispering lies like, you can't afford to be vulnerable. But he argues that true leadership actually begins not with visibility, but with vulnerability. He says, profoundly, no one benefits from your performance when your soul is perishing.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful statement. Why do you think that specific lie, that vulnerability is weakness, is so pervasive, so effective?
That's a crucial point. Because vulnerability feels like, well, it feels like opening yourself up to more pain, doesn't it? Or judgment. Our instinct is protection. But Onunga argues it's actually the opposite. It's where true strength, authenticity, connection, that's where it begins. The paradox is the very thing fear tells us will destroy us is what he says will ultimately save us. And it's a hard lesson. It goes against so much conditioning. So after that honest self-assessment, Onunga then asks himself, so now what? And this led him to the honest map, literally tracing the contours of his current landscape, emotionally, spiritually, financially, relationally, all of it. He says very wisely, God cannot lead the versions of us we're pretending to be. He can only guide the one who says, here I am, Lord, no filters, no masks. So this step is all about getting crystal clear on our present reality.
And that's a step we often rush past, I think. We want the vision, the big plan, before we've even clarified where we are right now. He talks about asking himself really deep questions like, why was I still afraid of rest? Or why did I equate productivity with worth? He even refers to God asking Elijah, what are you doing here, Elijah? Like a divine mapmaker asking him to look at where he'd ended up. It's an invitation to a really truthful inventory.
Yeah, exactly. So once that honest map is drawn, then Onunga says, we can move to reimagining vision. And it's not necessarily about grand ambition initially. For him, it started with this gentle, almost dangerous question that hit him while washing dishes. What if your best years aren't behind you? Just that simple question cracked open his whole narrative, his belief that he'd peaked, that his best days were done. It's a question that can feel both incredibly hopeful and kind of terrifying at the same time.
It really is. And what Onunga illustrates here is that vision isn't just about, building big platforms or companies. It's more about realigning with God's original intention for your life, rediscovering your why. He found hope in Isaiah 43:19. Behold, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? That speaks to an internal shift, right? A renewed sense of purpose that isn't tied to external circumstances.
And he connects this to Joseph's story, too. How his dream was shaped in darkness, in adversity. Joseph didn't just fulfill the dream, he embodied it with humility, with compassion, with vision that had been shaped in the darkness. So it's a vision that emerges from the hard times, tempered by them.
Okay, so vision is returning, but then comes this critical realization, I cannot do this alone. Which brings us to the next step, finding your guide, seeking out a mentor. But he's really specific about the kind of guide needed here, not just any coach. He calls it a shepherd, someone who has walked further and carries wisdom from their own scars. He describes seeking a voice that could guide, not control, a presence that could challenge, not condemn. That distinction feels really important, doesn't it?
Oh, it's crucial, especially today when mentorship can sometimes feel, commoditized or just focused on career stuff. Onunga's distinction between a transactional coach and a true shepherd mentor, it highlights a spiritual and emotional depth that goes way beyond performance metrics. He cites Proverbs 11.14, in the multitude of counselors there is safety. And a true mentor, he explains, doesn't just lecture, they listen, they inquire, offer perspective, ask better questions. They hold a mirror, not a magnifying glass. They challenge your assumptions and champion your becoming. It's about holistic wisdom, looking at the whole person, not just their output.
So you have this vision, this guidance. What does it mean day to day? How do you actually do this recovery? How does it become practical?
Right. So from that wisdom comes the blueprint. This is the, let's say, practical, maybe less glamorous part of recovery. It's where faith meets structure. And Onunga's guiding question here was, what do I need to do today to honor the person I'm becoming? He stresses this isn't about some 5-year plan. It's a question of alignment right now in this moment. How do we make this personal journey operational?
Exactly. And this step really pushes us to ask, are our daily actions genuinely aligned with who we say we want to be? He outlines these small, sacred steps like building habits for mental health, setting financial boundaries, nurturing relationships, and measuring growth without falling back into that old trap of just performing for performance's sake. He draws inspiration from Nehemiah rebuilding the wall and notes Proverbs 21.5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance.
It emphasizes that consistency,
Yeah.
Small intentional actions create momentum. You're building a new structure brick by brick.
Then comes the climb. And Anunga is very honest here. He calls this the hardest part. It demands discipline that goes beyond just feeling inspired. He describes his own small acts of obedience, like not snoozing the alarm, opening his Bible for footing, paying a debt. He says, I am not who I was, I am becoming. And he highlights something really true. No one applauds consistency. Especially when we crave instant results or public validation. What does that discipline beyond inspiration really look like in practice?
Well, I think it looks like showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's making choices rooted in your new values, not your old habits or, fleeting emotions. What Anunga brilliantly conveys here is his realization that recovery and restoration weren't about one defining moment. They were about daily decisions. And this connects deeply with James 2.17, right? Faith without works is dead.
Mm.
This consistent effort, aligned with your purpose, it becomes a form of worship almost, a tangible act of belief in the person you're becoming. He notes, the work didn't save me, but it shaped me.
Mm.
It's that incremental commitment that truly reshapes our internal landscape over time.
But no climbs, especially out of a deep valley like his, is ever smooth. There's resistance, which leads us to navigating storms. Onondaga is candid here. He admits he thought the worst was over, but then setbacks came. A closed door, old wounds reopening, financial loss. He started questioning if he'd made any real progress at all. He says, the temptation to give up returned, not with rage, but with the quiet, numbing weariness. So that sounds almost more dangerous than a big crisis, doesn't it? That quiet erosion of hope.
It absolutely is. And this is where the depth of his experience really shines through. He learned that setbacks don't mean failure. They mean friction. And friction is part of movement. That reframing is incredibly powerful, isn't it? Instead of seeing a setback as a sign to quit, he saw it as proof of progress. Like, growth is trying to happen here. He compares it to Jesus sending his disciples into a storm, maybe to reveal a new dimension of who he is. Storms become the proving ground where faith matures, and his new response was just profound. Pause and write, this is a storm. It is not the end. I will not make permanent decisions in temporary pain. That shows recovery is really progression, not perfection. It's a continuous, sometimes messy journey forward.
Okay, so after navigating those storms, finally we reach what he calls the ascent. And it's not a big fanfare, he explains, more like a quiet realization that the things that once broke you, they don't define you anymore. The internal noise is quieter, the pressure feels lighter. But here lies a new test, a different kind of challenge. Navigating success after failure. There's a temptation, he observes, to maybe overcompensate. Or to completely forget the valley now that you have a nice view. He notes, there's a subtle pressure to forget the valley now that you've found the view. How do you stay grounded then, when the view from the top is so tempting?
That's such a critical question, really, for anyone experiencing a comeback. Onunga reminds us of that warning in Deuteronomy 8, right? Not to forget God when you're satisfied. So he built guardrails. Things like protecting his quiet time, staying close to trusted people, resisting that urge to say yes to everything. And these aren't just practical rules, they're intentional choices, designed to protect the very things he'd redefined as true success. Integrity of soul, peace of mind, depth of relationship, clarity of purpose. He actually redefined success itself as alignment, integrity, presence. It's about not letting those old drivers, like ambition, grab the wheel again.
Living in recovery, he explains, is really about staying aware. Noticing when ego creeps back in or when old patterns knock on the door. It's a lifestyle of intentional living, remembering the climb never truly ends because growth is continuous. He realized the same God who walked with me in the valley was now inviting me to steward the mountaintop with the same dependence.
That's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That humility and dependence aren't things you shed once you've made it back. They're ongoing.
And this continuous journey, this way of living, Onunga says, ultimately leads to the legacy. What's so fascinating here is that he didn't set out to be a mentor or write a book about this stuff. His story became useful to others.
Right. He says, what once shamed me had become sacred. What once silenced me had become my message. He points to figures like Peter, Paul, even Ruth, how they turned their scars into testimonies, noting that none of them stopped at survival. They moved beyond just getting through it. They transformed their suffering into a source of hope for other people.
Yeah.
It's about moving beyond just surviving to actually thriving, and then, importantly, serving others from that place.
Your journey, he concludes, and he means your journey, listener, is a map for someone else. It is a mirror. It is a light. You become the lighthouse, not because you are above the waves, but because you've learned how to stand through them. You guide not from theory, but from testimony. It means your very existence, your lived experience of finding your own road back, becomes a profound act of service.
And so we kind of conclude this deep dive standing, maybe at the threshold of purpose, not perfection. Reuben Juma Onunga's journey is such a powerful reminder that recovery isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of living, a continuous re-engagement with our truest selves. If you take nothing else away from our chat today, maybe take this powerful truth he shares. You are not your failure. You are not the sum of your worst days. You are not beyond rebuilding. You are not too far gone.
Yeah. And that really raises an important question for you listening right now. How will you allow your recovery to be loud? Not necessarily in words, but in how you live your life, how you treat others, how you walk gently, how you carry joy. How will your authentic, rebuilt self become, well, a beacon for someone else?
Remember, the same Spirit, the same God who met you perhaps at rock bottom, is the one who walks with you into the future, wasting absolutely nothing from your story. So rise daily, deliberately, boldly. And when you rise, maybe look back occasionally, because someone else is watching. Someone else is waiting for proof that they too can start again.
Be that proof. Be that light. The road to recovery might have started in loss, but it really can end in legacy. And the journey, my friend, continues.